All right, everybody, welcome back to Culz Interviews. Today is going to be a very fun one because I think a lot of us know who Jimi Hendrix was as a guitar player, but I think today we're going to get quite a bit deeper into who he was as a person and what he was culturally as well. So I'm quite excited. And today joining us, we got Jimy Bleu, who I would say he has a tribute band, but having watched the videos, it feels a lot more than a tribute band. It feels like you encompass who Jimi Hendrix was, and it's almost like we get to step back in time and see who he was. So that's quite neat. Jimy, how are you doing today?
Hey guys, I appreciate you having me on. Really.
So I did see, because obviously you do the Jimi Hendrix stuff now, but you didn't start off with that as the tribute band. Is that correct?
No, actually, in middle school, I was doing a James Brown tribute with a very popular group. Even though we were kids, we were opening for Kool and the Gang, the Isley Brothers, and things like that. So I would do one set playing trombone, and then the second set come out as James Brown. So that was my thing to be James Brown. I just never seen anybody like that. Heard his voice and the way he moved. I have never, still today, I've never seen that. So that was my beginning. And then I got accepted into Performing Arts High School. And my junior year, I switched my major from trombone and trumpet to guitar after seeing the raw footage from Monterey Pop Festival and saw Jimy. The uncle to one of the students was actually had the editing facility in his apartment, and he was one of the cameramen at Monterey Pop, and he let us see the raw footage. And as a singer, I was waiting for Otis Redding. I'm sitting there like I couldn't wait. And then I saw Jimy, and I'm like, I have never seen anybody with a guitar like that, play guitar, and the way he moved with the instrument. That's what struck me the most. Not so much the playing, his whole just the movement. I've never seen a guitar today. I haven't seen a guitar player doing that. And that's what did it for me. I mean, after I switched my major, I joined his fan club, USA fan club. He had two. He had one in Britain and one in USA. And got to be around him often.
Now, you were kind of talking about the movement right there. What about the movement do you think helped accentuate the sounds that came from the guitar?
The notes come out differently. If I stand there and just play like that, but if I move and then maybe turn the guitar over as I'm moving, it's gonna be a different delivery. And that's what Jimi Hendrix's style was. And I started a Jimi Hendrix tribute in 1968 before I really knew what I was doing. But basically, that's why, because I felt that style had to be carried on. And again, today I haven't seen anybody nobody plays guitar like that. They are great guitar players. My hero, Steve Vai. I can go on and on. These cats are great technically. I have never seen and yet to see somebody deliver and present the guitar the way Jimy did it. That's why it's important that what I do.
Yeah, no, I watched quite a few of your videos of you performing, and it's quite remarkable. Just watching, it's like I said, it's like stepping back in time. Like you do such a phenomenal job. Like how do you get into the character of Jimi Hendrix when you do your stuff?
I'm an actor. I get on the stage, I play the role, and get off the stage and put the mask in the closet and get on with my life. Something like that. As if I'm playing Othello or something,
Yeah, no, we're friends with some actors who have played like Billy the Kid and stuff, and it's quite amazing. Like you see them on film, and then you see them outside of it, and they're just like completely different. They're like, "Yep, it's just a job, we go in, we be who we're supposed to be, and then once it's over, it's over."
It's over, yeah.
Well, you talked a little bit about the fan club, and I heard one story about how you actually got into it. You saw it first from a button. Is that correct?
Oh, well, yeah. I actually, there was this girl in my school, and she was a groupie for Grand Funk, Led Zeppelin, I think Yes, a few of the bands that, whenever they were coming to town, she was one of the groupies. And so I was trying to get with her. I mean, she was talking about Foxy Lady, yikes. And I was trying to get with her. So one day she came to school with this yellow and blue button that said official Jimi Hendrix fan club want to reprise records. And I'm like, okay, I wasn't really into Jimmy. I was still doing gigs with the James Brown tribute. So, it was like pulling me. And then I said, wow, I guess if I join the fan club, be able to get with her. So she took me down to Warner's, and we met the secretary Trixie, and I signed up for the fan club, and boom, 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 and that's how I started. I never did get with her. I was a kid. She was used to older men. You know what I mean? Being a groupie. I was a kid, but that's what got me into Jimmy, more or less. And it's weird you mentioned that button, because that used to get us into the Felt Forum, the Fillmore. We used to like show up like we were press agents and go, yeah, and they let us in, or the vice president of the fan club would give him a bag of weed at the door. And that's how we got in. We get behind the stage and everything.
Yeah, so can you tell us any like fun stories you had from like maybe behind the stage seeing Jimmy kind of playing on stage there?
Well, not fun, but there was one time I saw an argument with him and his manager, Mike Jeffries, and it was heated. We came up the back stairs, and it was, I think it's Fillmore, and Mike had him against the wall. I couldn't really make out what they were saying, but he had his hand on his shoulder. And as you know, I don't know if you know the history, but Mike Jeffries was mob-related, ex-MI5 agent. This guy was a gangster for real. And so Jimmy, I guess Jimmy didn't want to play, from what I heard. And that was really, I mean, we stayed and watched for maybe close to 30 seconds before Mike turned around and saw us coming up the stairs, and we said, "Ooh, guess what? Not going out that way." And we all went downstairs. See, we were kids, 16 and 17, so they pretty much left us alone. We could go in the back and hang out with Jimmy. Had two other protégés who also traveled with him. So we go back and hang out. I've seen him backstage with Sly, Miles Davis. I've seen him backstage with some heavy hitters, jamming with Johnny Winter backstage. Forget about the Scene Club. I've been to many jams at the Scene Club, and yeah, I got to see a good part of him in different things. One thing I noticed about Jimi Hendrix, he was a different person to different people. So you read the bios and the documentary interviews. Oh, Jimi Hendrix is blah blah blah. Yeah, to you. But being around somebody else, he was a whole different Jimi Hendrix.
Isn't that interesting? I'm a huge fan of James Dean, right? And there's so many books about James Dean from people that knew him, but they're always so much different. And I wonder if it's kind of like that same thing. He just has a different personality. Well, I guess what was his personality backstage and in real life versus his stage personality? Because I know at one point there was one where he's actually quite nervous playing.
Oh yeah, he was always nervous, even up until his death. I like to say that about a year and a half before he died, Jimmy came into spiritual teachings. So it was a whole different Jimi Hendrix then, before he died, than when he was a pop star, came out the box. It was a totally different person. He was starting to put things together, not only spiritually, but also finding out what they were doing to him management-wise, taking his money. And so he was starting to go, oh, okay, that's how it is, huh? And then spiritually, he was growing. So there's two different Jimi Hendrix. I do this when I do the lectures. I like to concentrate on the two different Jimmys.
Yeah, because he was getting into like the Egyptian teachings. Is that correct?
Yes, he was into it for about a year and a half before he died, thanks to Rashawn Roland Kirk. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. The jazz saxophone player who played 3 saxes at one time, and also another jazz musician, Sun Ra, whose whole thing was about the ancient Egyptian teachings. So he got into it thanks to Rashawn Kirk, and he was also into the fourth way Gurdjieff teaching. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. George
No,
Gurdjieff,
but I'm very interested.
Yeah, George Gurdjieff, you need to Google him. And he was into that thanks to Timothy Leary. He was very close to Timothy Leary. He's on Timothy's album. And I actually say he produced that album, although he's not given the credit. but he's all over that album. He playing bass mostly. And they hung out. They would always hang out in the village. And Timothy Leary got him into the Fourth Way, the Gurdjieff Foundation on 63rd Street. So he was growing spiritually. And yeah, keep in mind, he was 27 when he died. What were you doing? What were you and I doing at 27? You know what I mean? This guy was deep. And that's why my lectures focus on that deepness, that mysticism.
Yeah, no, you're right. When I was 27, man, what was I doing, Sam? What were we maybe walking around Seattle? I'm not sure.
Oh, you from Seattle?
No, we're from Colorado, but we just travel a lot. We love history and stuff, and I know one of our trips we went out to Seattle and just enjoyed it. And Jimy was from Seattle, correct?
Yeah, but he considered himself a New Yorker. When you spoke to him, he would change the conversation and distance himself from Seattle. He considered himself a New Yorker through and through, which is why there's a petition. If you come across it, please sign it online to make West 8th Street Jimi Hendrix Way, because Electric Lady's on West 8th Street, and we're trying to get that happening for him. I mean, listen, they got Tupac and Biggie streets, why can't they have Jimi Hendrix? You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Right? No, I agree with you there. Jimy was, I mean, Tupac and Biggie are really big, especially for our generation, but Jimy was much bigger culturally too. But kind of going back to the Egyptian teachings, can you go a little bit more into that? For like what was some of his thoughts on that and that kind of stuff?
Well, the paranormal, since you guys are into that, are you familiar with John Anthony West?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. He's a proponent of the ancient Egyptian teachings. And the teachings are still going on by the indigenous Africans from the continent, although they're underground, meaning hidden from plain sight. And Jimy got involved in that. The teachings are a way of awakening oneself, meaning the same methods that they use in yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, things like that. Practical methods of inner self-development.
And you said you saw this with Jimy, like towards the end, he actually was growing quite a bit thanks to it.
Oh, most definitely. Matter of fact, he turned two of his bandmates onto these teachings. When you watch the Jimi Hendrix docs, have you guys seen any of the Jimi Hendrix documentaries?
A couple of them, yeah.
Well, the one from 1973, you see these twins interviewed, these black twins interviewed in a park. And they were singers who were part of Jimy, the whole Jimy thing. They were very close with Jimy. He actually turned them on to the teachings, so much so that they changed their names to Egyptian names. But I interviewed one of them on my radio show, and he said Jimy got us into it, and so he was, like I said, he was becoming a changed man. He was growing spiritually, growing musically. He was realizing, okay, I'm not growing here musically. He wanted to do different things with different people, and it was going to be a whole nother Jimy coming out the box. But he died.
Yeah, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
So many bright stars were taken so young, and
sure,
it's always kind of the big what ifs. Like, what if somebody lived there and here? Where do you think Jimy would have gone as far as a musician? Do you see any genre that he would have really fit into or expanded? Like, where do you think he would have gone had he, lived on?
Well, Jimy was blues based, but he was really getting more into jazz after hanging around musician Larry Coryell. Larry was showing him jazz chords, and they became close doing that. Matter of fact, if you see Jimy at Woodstock and you hear him play that ballad, instrumental ballad, a lot of those chordings are from Larry Coryell. And I interviewed Larry Coryell on my radio show, and he verified that as well. But I knew this from Jimy, and he would have got more into jazz. He turned us, a few members of the fan club, he turned us on to Berklee College of Music in Boston, because he was fired up about this new school, as he said, that had a jazz curriculum instead of classical. And he was like, wow. So three of us took the test, and only two of us made it into the school. But yeah, so he would have been going in that direction. He would have been doing a lot of things. He wanted to work with Paul McCartney. You can Google a telegram that he sent to Paul McCartney. And the telegram, I'm paraphrasing, says, we have a group with Tony Williams, Miles Davis, and we'd like you to play bass. Now I'm paraphrasing, but that's what the telegram says. And it's to Paul McCartney. A lot of people don't realize Paul McCartney and John Lennon were two of his closest friends as well. And now Paul didn't get the telegram. He was on vacation. So one of his associates sent it back to Jimy, that he's on vacation or something like that. So yeah, he was going to be doing a lot, man.
Well, including possibly doing some films, right?
Yes, he actually submitted a film script to Warner Brothers about a character named Black Gold, who was like an Indiana Jones character, traveled around the world and had these different mystical adventures, or I should say paranormal adventures, because he part of the script, he runs into aliens and he's abducted and, the whole thing. But he actually submitted that script to Warner Brothers with notes of what he wanted. And it wasn't a full script. It says more to come, but he was going in that direction, sure.
Yeah, just very talented all over. I mean, what about him do you think helped him be so talented? I mean, I know musically you list two individuals that really helped hone in his skills and how he performed. Do you want to go into them?
Wait, which individual was you?
Chaz Chandler and Linda Keith.
Oh, without Linda, there would be no Jimi Hendrix. I know I get in trouble. I say that a lot. She actually was going with Keith Richards, and she saw Jimy and groomed him. Now she claims there was no intimate relationship, but she groomed him, made him sing more, because he was, like you said, nervous earlier. He was really nervous about his singing. He wouldn't really sing all the time. He'd be in the back playing. She made him come out singing more. There was a film actually called All Is By My Side, with Andre Benjamin playing Jimi Hendrix. And that's the one thing they got right. These Jimi Hendrix movies, oh my God. But that's one thing they got right, was his relationship with Linda Keith and how she groomed him. No, take that shirt off, put this on, blah, 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 And because what she was doing was bringing industry people down to see him when he was at the Cafe Wall. All of them said, nah, I don't see that. Why you bring me down here? You're wasting my time. Nah. And I'm talking about top industry people that she knew. And it wasn't until she brought Chaz down, and Chaz was like, got it. And I spoke to Chaz, not on my radio show, but I spoke to him. He saw my Hendrix tribute on in the Village, and walked in just as we were taking equipment off the stage. We'd finished. So he knew the bartender. Hey, come on, I want you to meet somebody. And it's just Chaz Chandler. I'm like, what? So basically, I'm sitting at the bar. He's drinking beer, and I'm drinking. I only drink cognac. And he's talking his head off. And I went to my guitar case and got my tape recorder out. And he wouldn't let me tape him. But so I did get the accountant pad from the bartender from behind it, and was able to take notes as he's talking. But yeah, he told me the only thing he regrets is making a deal with the devil. Meaning, the only way he can get that guy, Hendrix, up to where he was with Mike Jeffries pulling the strings. Because of the racism, Jimy was a black rocker, which was still a no-no today, but certainly back then. And just all of the little obstacles, he knew only one man could pull the strings and do that. And there's no way he couldn't deal with Mike Jeffries. That's why Jimi Hendrix, before he died, was the #1 rock performer, highest paid #1, more than the Beatles, more than the Stones. And that's because of Mike Jeffries, pulling the strings, making a deal with the industry people, making a deal with the mob. Jimmy's studio is on West 8th Street. Back then, that was mob territory. You know what I mean? And how does a black guy have a recording studio? It was actually the first recording studio by a rock artist. And on a mob's in mob territory. You better know somebody. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of shenanigans going on.
Yeah, no, the mafia was very, very powerful. My dad's side of the family is from Chicago. They came over from Greece in 1915, but they opened up downtown, and they actually had like Capone and Dillinger and Moran come in and out. But one day, somebody came in. It wasn't any of the big guys, but they were like, "You probably should close down." So they
You
closed
what?
down. They came in and were like, "You probably should close down."
Mm.
And so my yaya or my great yaya closed down, and I guess two guys like followed her home, and she was so nervous she ran, her belt like fell off, and so they followed her and gave her her belt back. But the St. Valentine's Day massacre just happened, just a couple down.
Yikes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I definitely get that aspect. You talk about Jeffries, and I saw where um, Hendrix had gotten kidnapped, and perhaps maybe he had a little hand in that.
That's what they say. Actually, Jimmy got kidnapped twice. The second one's not really talked about. And that's the one where they beat the crap out of him and scared the so much so that he went into hiding. And there are demos that you can get on YouTube of him playing in a hotel room with just pretty much either guitars plugged into a tiny amp, or he's just playing electric guitar unplugged in, and he's working out songs that, you know, like Angel and things like that. That's when he was in hiding. And the reason why we got a hold of those tapes is because one of his proteges, Velvet Turner, who's another one who hasn't been interviewed, and this guy, him, Chaz, and Linda, that's the Jimi Hendrix story right there. They could tell you everything about what's going on.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot. Like you said, it's the time as well has just got to be hard for Jimmy to break through. And you've said a lot that he was very dangerous. Um, just what he was doing. Do you want to kind of explain a little bit more about that?
Well, thanks to Velvet Turner, I saw Jimmy's FBI files from the Freedom of Information Act in the 70s. He had, in the file cabinet, he had lots of, and I was able to go through some of them. Yeah. I'm not, a lot of it was redacted, and I'm not going to say they're responsible for that. I ain't going to say that. I mean, he's dead. And when people bring up, well, what do you think about his death at my lectures? I'm like, next question. I don't even talk about that. Okay. But what I saw, oh yeah, this guy, he couldn't be allowed to stay around. That's for sure. And they had surveillance. Wow. You think they had surveillance on Martin Luther King? They had surveillance over there because, like I said, he was the #1 rock performer of his time. The guy was openly going around with 3 or 4 white women on his song. You know, like he had no thing of race. You know what I mean? He said, oh, blah, blah, blah. That, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Especially back then, you cannot do that and not be somebody got their telescope on you, man.
Right. Yeah. No, I know, people think about Elvis a lot because he got in trouble for just dancing in certain ways, but like Hendrix is a whole different level, you know. I can't imagine the stuff he was going through, but I mean that was very powerful. I mean, he even was on the R&B charts. His songs. It wasn't just the rock charts, right?
Yes. Interesting you bring that up. A lot of people are not aware of that. While Jimmy was charting on Billboard's rock charts, those albums, plus the albums after he died, simultaneously they were charting high on the R&B soul charts. So when people say, I'm talking about like, Are You Experienced, Axis, what are they doing on black charts? So when you hear people say, oh, Jimmy didn't connect with the black people, you know what I mean? You got to look at them in a different way. Let me tell you something. My hero ever, my hero is Sherlock Holmes. And the reason why is because when he investigated something, he used deduction, objectivity, and impartiality, science, you know what I mean? To come to a conclusion. He didn't just say, oh, this is this one, but he did, you know what I mean? He put all those elements together to come to the right decision. and to write at least something to work with to start. That, whether I'm not going into whether he existed or not, what I'm saying is that method is what I use with Hendrix. There was a lot he did wrong that I don't do, and I'm the first to say it. But his potential as a human being, you mentioned Elvis, was much more than anybody because he was bringing races together. Kevin, excuse me, Keegan, bringing races together. That's, you can't do that today. You know what I mean? Today it's like, but back then, they didn't want to. Keep in mind, we're talking about a period when hippieism was flourishing, and that was dangerous. I mean, I was at Woodstock and I didn't like it. I was covered in mud the whole time and I was hungry. And I'm a mama's boy, so I didn't like it. But I knew walking around and seeing that, oh no, they're not going to allow this. And I was like maybe 16, 17, but I was astute enough to know, oh no, they're not going to allow this to flourish. It was too free, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And plus there were people like, there were spiritually minded people there. There were like hippies smoking and lots of sex and you know, it was crazy. And I'm like, this is not. And one powerful thing about it is when Sly was on, they were doing Higher. I wanna take you higher, higher. And Sly would have the audience say higher. They said on the news the next day that you can actually hear them yelling higher from across the river into Manhattan.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's that's a lot of people yelling higher. So I'm like, oh no, they're not going to allow this to continue.
Oh, especially in New York, it's so loud there anyway. It's bustling. Yeah. I mean, I've been there. Yeah, no. So what? I mean, you kind of briefly mentioned it, but Woodstock. I mean, that's such a big event. Like, we don't really have those type of things going on today. I mean, how was that for you when you went through that?
Well, I was there with a few members of the fan club, and I actually have his guitar strap from there. When he came on and went up stairs to the stage, his guitar strap, you know, was connected to the horn and the, you know, and then there's a horn and the connection in the back. The horn up here, it popped. It like, you know, snapped off. It was no more good. And he got mad and just took it off and just threw it. And the roadie went and gave him another strap, but he threw it in the mud pit. If you watch the Woodstock Festival, you'll see there was a big thing where the photographers were and stuff. That's where we were when he came out on stage. Call it the mud pit, because it was everywhere you stepped. It was like you're stepping in about at least up to your ankles in mud, maybe more. And that's where we were. And I happened to catch the strap. And that's the only good part I can think of. I hated that festival. I was actually at the Shokan House during the rehearsals. I was there twice doing the rehearsals, and which sounded like crap because everybody was high and they just couldn't get together. Even the whole Woodstock, him playing in Woodstock, was really a jam session. It wasn't nothing really formal, considering they had maybe 2.5 weeks to rehearse and get something really popping. I think the saving grace of that festival is the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah, no, it's pretty iconic as far as what people may just like when they think Jimi Hendrix. Like, I know in my high school, one of the girls learned how to do it, and she did it before an assembly, and it just like popped the whole crowd. Like, everyone got really excited.
Yeah. He had done it maybe so many times before then, but it was just at that festival where it really made sense. You know what I mean? And he only performed maybe 60,000 people. Everybody was Monday morning. Everybody had to cut out and go to work. So he didn't perform in front of 500,000 people. They kept pushing him back time-wise.
No, that's crazy. Sam, before I just overrun the interview and don't let you talk.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
I'm just so excited. I apologize, Sam.
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, I was going to dive into the spiritualism stuff, but we kind of already covered that.
If there's anything more you want to get into it.
I'm trying to think. I'm learning a lot. So, like I watched a lot and learned a lot, but I'm just constantly learning. Let me try and think, because
Well, while you're thinking here, do you want to talk a little bit about Band of Gypsies?
Yes, well, you're familiar with Buddy Miles, the drummer. But what a lot of people don't know is that Buddy Miles played on the demos for the first three albums. He would play drums and Jimy would play bass. And then the other instruments were recorded on top of that. And Jimmy's playing, they left Jimmy's bass on most of those recordings. Noel is not playing on most of those recordings. That's Jimmy's bass because it locked in with the drums. So when Mitch came and played the drums, that bass locked in, and it didn't lock in when they had Noel come and put a bass track on. That's what Chaz told me. Yeah, but the Band of Gypsies was he wanted to go into a more soulful, all black thing, and it wasn't going to be all black. He wanted Steve Winwood on keyboards to switch on keyboards and guitar with that band, but Steve was already involved. But he was close to Steve Winwood, and he really wanted him in on that Band of Gypsies. So a lot of people say, "Oh, Jimy want to go pro black and have it." It was really supposed to be a 4-piece, but it turned out to be a 3-piece. I was at 3 of the 4 performances, and to tell you the truth, the group that opened for them, I got more of that, what I call Holy Ghost, from them than I got from Hendrix. That was the Voices of East Harlem, and Jimy. It affected Jimy so much that he would, while they were playing, he would come out and watch them from the side of the stage. He loved that band, but he loved the energy of the kids so much so that he insisted until he died that group, Voices of East Harlem, opened for him on his Cry of Love tour, which they did on most of the dates. He was so in love with that band and that energy, and that's what happened. They were under-rehearsed, amateurish so much that they start one song and it bombs, and Jimy just stops and goes into another song because it was bad. I mean, it was like it was really bad. The saving grace of that album is Machine Gun. That's it. That pretty much saves the whole album. A lot of people try to make that album better than what it was. It's spliced. Eddie Kramer, who engineered the album and had something to do with the production, he should be given a Grammy for splicing. He spliced that album together. You know what I mean? And you can really hear this when you listen to Message of Love. And after the solo, the splice isn't right. It's kind of like offbeat. You can hear that. Plus on that, the last song, you can hear it as well. We Got to Live Together. You can hear it's a not really good splice job. And like I said, the saving grace, that Machine Gun, yikes. That is a musical opera. You know what I mean? He's describing the war conditions. He's giving you the screams, the bombs, the whole thing. Plus, he's playing his off while he's doing it. But the sounds, that's what made Jimi Hendrix, was the sounds. Very important to keep that in mind. Pete Townshend says that Jimy was an alchemist. He would take influences from different people, even The Who, with the feedback, and was able to put it into a mix and present it. Plus, he was able to take that paranormal sci-fi element, which a lot of people tried and wasn't successful in doing it. He was able to make that part of his everyday thing, especially on the second album, Axis Boat as well. Wow.
I have a question. From in your performances, how do you keep up with that same intense energy constantly on the shows?
My performance is I'm asked that a lot, and I don't do drugs. I do Tai Chi, meditation, and my shows are 2.5 to 3 hours. Costume changes. We do all of his iconic performances. Now, not every performance, not every venue wants all of them. But we do pre-fame in England. And come out and do Monterey Pop. Come out and do his Fillmore years. come out and do Band of Gypsies. That's switching sidemen. I got 2 black guys now with Band of Gypsies. Come out and do Woodstock with a 6-piece band. And then end the show with the Cry I Love tour. And in between those costume changes, of video excerpts of different people talking about Jimy, Jimy himself talking about the music and things like that, gives me time to change my costume and come out. Nothing has ever been done like this on any artist. Even when you watch Beatlemania or you see Beatlemania live, they don't go this in depth into what he was about, what they were about. That now, where I get that energy to answer your question is from Monterey Pop. Jimy was never able to match that intensity again. And that's not just my words. Chad Chandler said the same thing. That concert had to count. Matter of fact, when you see Jimy doing his sound check, he's playing, and I think you can still see video excerpts of that, of him playing for the sound check with the army jacket on. And he's just wild and, playing all over, because he was so nervous, like you said again, the nervousness, that he was doing beer, LSD, and smoking with Brian Jones from the Stones. So, I mean, like, your mind got to be wrecked. I mean, I can't even imagine that. And that's what he was doing. So when he got up to play, he was all over the place. And Chaz, after the sound check, Chaz let him do the songs. Chaz took him in the back, put him against the wall. I mean, slammed him, Chaz said, and said, "Look, you mother, don't you mess this up. This has to count. Do not mess this up. I will kill you." And Jimy, Jimy was like, he said Jimy was like, and scared straight, as they say. And when you watch the Monterey Pop performance, he's playing Can You See Me? He hits like a bad note, and you see him look down to Chaz, saying, don't worry, I got it. That look says, don't worry, I'm not going to mess up. You know what I mean? Because Chaz set fire to him, and then the rest of the concert's just history. But that intensity, like I said, he was never able to match. And that's what even those iconic performances I mentioned that we do, it's all with that Monterey Pop energy. Very few songs do I stand up there and just play. Maybe Red House, maybe something like that. I'll stand up there just to play for a while. Most of the time, I'm jumping around the stage like Michael Jackson, man, I'm telling you. With the guitar, I'm all over the place. And it's because of that Monterey Pop energy.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Yeah, no, I saw it and I was just so impressed with your work. We'll have to come watch a show sometime, because you do shows at different locations. Is that correct?
Oh yes, we've been around the planet. We've been in Colorado. Is Aspen in Colorado?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we played. There's a big rock club in Aspen, and I had a good time. Matter of fact, really nice people. Supposed to be some of the wealthiest people in the world. I ain't seen none of it, but I did have a good time. So yeah, we'll be up your way soon.
Yeah, no, definitely let us know. We'll come visit and watch the show, because it's so good. You before we had started recording, you were talking about a Roswell one that you did. How was that? And was it kind of just the same thing, like a rock festival, or what was that about?
Yeah, it was. I forgot what it was called. It was a big rock festival. We wasn't the headliners, and we played, and then we went to the UFO event after. So it must have been a time of the same event that you're talking about, because we went to something like that. And like I said, I met George Norrie, a few other people connected with the whole paranormal sci-fi thing. Most of the people, to tell you the truth, I met were like whack. I mean, no, it's not fair for me to say that. When they would talk, they'd be like, are we on the same planet here? But I wouldn't let them know. I'd give them respect, and hey, maybe they did go through that, but it wasn't hitting with me. But I did meet some very beautiful people. That's right.
Yeah, no, it's a fun thing about festivals is there's so varied amount of different experiences and people that you can just interact with. Yeah, no, we've enjoyed it when we go out there. I'm big into Billy the Kid, so there's a lot of that going around there, and our buddy's written a ton about that. But kind of go into your research. It's what I enjoy about what I've heard from you is you're just to the point. Like you present the facts, and that's what they are. You don't have one side or the other, and I appreciate that a lot when you do that. Do you have any books that perhaps the listeners should read to learn more about Jimy?
I would say the mainstream books out there. What is it, Electric Lady, straight from the record, things like that. Listen, I don't put the books and the bios and the documentaries down. I don't put them down. They can give you the general information on Hendrix. My job is to give the mystical element and the spiritual element, which everybody leaves out. Everybody. I'm not, no exceptions. You won't get you won't find people talking about this. They just treat him like another rock star who lived and he died. And I'm like, wait a minute, this guy was really deep. There's another book called Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy by Corey Washington. And that gets into what you were mentioning before, Jimmy association with the Black community, being on the Black charts, which nobody talks about. That's really a good book. And I'm not saying that because he has me in it, but it's a really good book. But like I said, my job is to get into the whole supernatural. I mean, a lot of people ask at my lectures, well, was Jimmy into science fiction and stuff? And yes, the paranormal and science fiction's all over his writings. Look at his lyrics, especially the ballads, his early ballads. Not just Little Wing. I'm talking about May This Be Love, One Rainy Wish. Just listen to those lyrics. It's like Castles Made of Sand. That's like outer space stuff. He was able to take that whole outer space alien influence and put it into rock. I haven't seen nobody doing that. Maybe you guys know the term. The only people that I would say comes close and actually does a more fantastic job of presenting it flawlessly is Yes, early Yes. I used to see them, and it was like sitting there watching it. Plus, I was stoned, so it's like watching a Tolkien novel. You know how to tell a story, and then it's like painted with the music, and it's amazing. And the thing I liked about Yes was every performance was pristine. There was no bad performances. I can't say that with Hendrix. Most of the time I saw Hendrix, it was horrible. Either the sound, he was too high. I can go on and on of why just about everyone wasn't good. Same thing with Led Zeppelin. I saw Led Zeppelin 3 times. It was like, yikes. And it could have been just the sound engineer, whatever. Now that I'm old and I know what to listen for. But it wasn't good. Now, Grand Funk, every time I saw them, they were like, I was at the Garden for the live album. I'm one of those screaming. And just amazing sound. Mark Farner was just amazing with what he did. You know, with little, and he wasn't really a technical giant, but that band was just, wow, amazing sound, man.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because we've interviewed some musicians, and we always ask them when watching movies or if they go to concerts, do they pay attention to that kind of stuff? So that was interesting that you brought that up. Like, do you do that with movies too when you watch movies or biopics on musicians? Are you like, okay, maybe they're not actually playing there, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, most of them, they're not playing. Matter of fact, Hollywood has a thing of hiring musicians to play a lead role. I guess they want a name and they want an actor to present it who's able to act, which is understandable, but there are some musicians who can act as well. Jamie Foxx doing Ray Charles. That's my template right there. Jamie Foxx was able to not only sing like Ray, but he's able to play like Ray. Plus the guy is alone, just a fantastic musician singer. That is my template for doing movies, not just black film, but movies in particular, because most of the movies we have is you seeing the guy pretending he's playing. Forrest Whitaker did a good job with Bird, even though he's not a musician. He got Charlie Parker down pretty well. But yeah, what you said is the norm, man. They're not going to hire a musician.
It's a very strange way sometimes of hiring, because I know the Tupac film that came out, they hired a guy that looked a lot like Tupac, but he couldn't act. And so you kind of had that, and then you have Oh, what was his name? Austin Butler, who did Elvis.
Huh.
I thought did really pretty good
Yes,
there too,
yes,
because he actually sang. I know
yes.
towards the end they had to mix his vocals, but yeah, sometimes you get those. You kind of mentioned your lectures, and people can actually come watch you and listen to your lectures too. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that for the listeners of the show?
Yeah, the lectures are called Jimi Hendrix American Guru because one of the reasons why he was dangerous to the powers that be is because towards his life he was he had that potential to be a guru. People were following him, and if he got more spiritual, yikes, that would have been totally dangerous to the point of cultism, which we can see happening today. Which I ain't gonna mention no names, but
We know.
it could be very dangerous. So the thing is, um, my lectures focus, as I said, they focus on the mysticism and the spirituality that Jimi Hendrix was getting into. But I also delve deep into the music. What made his guitar playing different from a Steve Vai or Satriani? Why is it different? Those guys could play rings around what Jimmy was doing. But why is Jimmy guitar playing still #1 by Rolling Stone today, over 50 years after he died? There must have been something he was doing, and people need to see that. That's why my live shows are important, and in the lectures I demonstrate that. What made him? My focus with him is with the body movement and the and his technique, and why it was so important to his technique. So yeah, and there was a point where at the Fillmore, Billy Graham told him, "Hey man, you don't need to move around and do all of that, jump around like a monkey. Just stand up there and play guitar, man. You're the greatest. Just stand up there and play guitar." Which he tried for I think 1 or 2 sets, and then you know, anyway, right after that, he met Sun Ra, the jazz musician, for a second time, and Sun Ra said, "What better way to manipulate sound than with your body?" You know what I mean? So then the Jimi Hendrix we see before he died, you see him going back into the squats and the whole thing. Even though in the back of his mind, like I said, he was becoming more aware of what his management was doing and he was looking to get out. So he had that cloud hanging over his head. It's amazing he was able to get up on stage and give it. You know what I mean? Because me, I'd be like, I'd go through the motions. you, you know what I mean? I mean, but he's like at a total abandonment and just was, of course he was high, but to get into it like that with all of that hanging over you, right? So I get into all of that in my lectures. We delve into the music and the mysticism behind the music, which if you talk to anybody, they're not even to tell you what the mysticism is. You read the books and the docs. Oh, Jimmy, yeah, he had this mystical element. Yeah, what was the mystical element? Maybe I, as somebody viewing or listening to your interview, maybe I can get something from that instead of popping LSD or whatever, to get to that level he was on. And so I make it a point. I have a lot of kids at my lectures sometimes, parents to bring their kids. So of course I can't talk about sex and how much that had, the influence, that energy, that whole sexual energy. But I could talk about definitely the natural ways of getting high, which Jimmy was weaning himself. He had already weaned himself off of hard drugs before he died. And he was starting to wean himself off of pot because he was getting more into meditation and things like that, to really deepen his mind. So, yeah, he's getting into a lot of things, man.
Well, besides the teachings, is there anything that led him down that route of mysticism that you were able to find, like a person or an event or a song? Like, what do you think kind of helped him go down that path?
Well, it was a combination of the teachings and, as I said earlier, the Gurdjieff teachings, which you guys should Google. Gurdjieff was quite a character. Had a big influence on the Western world, and his teachings are one of the foundations on 63rd Street, and Jimmy was a part of that. Although he was not connected with the 63rd Street Foundation, they sent him to the Harlem Foundation, which is why you see reports of Jimmy hanging out in Harlem a lot. Um, But those two paths, yeah, that's pretty much what did it for him. That's what was straightening him, straightening him out.
Sam.
Yes.
Well, I was handing off to you. I feel bad. I always take over.
Sorry, I was looking up.
You were looking it up?
Gurdjieff teachings to check that out later, to remind myself because I would forget.
Did you find it?
I believe so. It's Gurdjieff.
Yes.
Yeah, I did find it. He has like a YouTube thing and then a bunch of books as well, or it looks like.
Yes, and the YouTube videos are short, so just going through them, you'll get a lot in the general of what this guy was about.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious about that because I definitely had like a brain injury where my brain is kind of a lot slower than it used to be because I don't know what happened. I think I may have I had a hat on and I may have hit the steering wheel, which hit that, but I don't remember it. And yeah, so I've just been looking at ways to maybe do that without spending a bunch on brain neurology training, because I did that and I got a total of I think 80 hours because it was on a deal, but I spent $3,000 doing it. And it helped a lot, but it's still not the best, not where I would like it to be.
Well, the Gurdjieff work is basically the premise is that man and woman, humanity is asleep, walking in a walking sleep. Liberation from the sleep requires an inner work. Meaning, as I'm talking to you guys now, there's something that I'm doing to keep me aware, presence, that I'm talking to you and not going off in the la-la land. Now, it slips, but I come back to it. That's basically, I'm giving you a general idea of what the inner work is. And this is what Jimy was coming into before he died, which is why some of his friends were like, this guy is in the same, you know what I mean? I spoke to a lot of his friends, not just through my radio show, but I spoke to a lot of people close to Jimy, and they would tell you he was really changing, but they can't tell you why. And that's pretty much what was going down with him.
No, I've always been curious about that too, even before my whole incident, because I always felt like things were not how they should be, or it wasn't all being explained to us, and there was other things out there.
Also, another premise is nature develops us to a certain point, and we have three options, meaning pretty much lose the capacity to develop, meaning lose our minds completely. And you've seen some wacko people and some really dangerous people, no possibility of development, at least from what I can see. The second option is stay as we are and we die, pretty much. And the third option is to develop certain inequalities that can't develop on their own, that needs a certain push from us to develop the higher qualities in us. You're talking about the paranormal and speaking, all of that comes from developing these higher, well, let me say from me, because some people claim that they can do it, and who am I to say that they can't? I'm saying from me, I found it was necessary. I used to read Carlos Castaneda a lot, and I used to be totally into science fiction, and oh my God, I still love it, but I used to be totally absorbed. And then I got to realize, wait a minute, none of this is going to happen unless I change me first. I have to change who I am. You know what I mean? And my grandfather helped me immensely as a teenager, and until he died. So that my grandfather was involved with me getting into the work and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at, man. And think about it. Most of the people you know, you talk to them about what I just said, and they'd be like, "Oh, look at the time," you know.
No,
they don't want to hear that. Yeah, they don't want to hear that stuff, man.
I have talked to people about that, and they're just like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And they're just like, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I'm just like, "Okay."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Miles Davis earlier. They played together, correct?
Oh yeah, they played together. They hung out together. Matter of fact, are you familiar with Miles' album "Bitches Brew"? Okay, originally Jimi Hendrix and Sly Stone was supposed to be on that album. Now, Miles in his bio says the reason why Jimmy wasn't on the album is because Miles thought that Jimmy was messing with his wife, Betty Davis, which he was. But she denies it, and because she introduced Miles to Jimmy and Sly. So he claims that, once he found that out, he got John McLaughlin instead to be on the album. Now, I don't know why Sly wasn't included on the album, but those three were running buddies for quite a few months. And I always tell my people, the audience in the interviews, think of those three not only on the album, one album together. Think of those three hanging out. What were they doing? They wanted to go on to pizza. You know what I mean? So basically, besides the drugs, what were they doing? They were partying. You know what I mean? So these were three kings back then. This was they all three of them were at the peak of their career back then. So yeah, they were very close. There were some recordings that you can get that says Miles is playing on a couple of studio recordings of Jimmy. They haven't been able to really verify. It sounds like Miles to me. Haven't been able to really verify that. But are you familiar with man? I always say Terry Knight, rock star, Terry Reid.
I think so.
English rock star.
Okay.
He was the original singer for Led Zeppelin. And then he said, hey, man, y'all need to get Robert Plant to do this. And that's how they got Robert Plant. And he became Terry Reid became a star in his own right, if you Google him. Well, I interviewed him twice on my radio show. And there's even a book called Room Full of Mirrors where he describes this. But there was one time where he was in an apartment with Jimmy, and their two girlfriends went out shopping. So Jimmy went to take a shower, said, I got somebody coming over and get the door for me. So the door knocks, and he peeks to the keyhole, and Terry says, he's the only guy I've seen who looks like his album covers. And it was Miles Davis. And he opens the door, and Miles says, is Jimmy here? And I said, yeah, he's in the shower. Come on in. And Miles said, that's all right, I'll wait here. And he grabs the door and shuts it. And so Miles, then Hendrix comes out the shower with a towel on and says, oh man, who's at the door? Oh, Miles Davis is waiting for you. Oh man, why didn't you let him in? So he opens the door, and him and Miles go into the bedroom. And then Terry said you can hear them playing. Jimmy on a small amp and Miles with a trumpet and piano, electric piano. Every time they were together, I saw one point where they were together. And every time they were together, it was always an instructional for Hendrix. Miles was always teaching them about chords and cursing them out. Man, don't you know what an augmented 13 is? So really schooling him on not just playing blues, relying on blues, but getting more into jazz recordings and everything. So that's one verified thing of Jimmy and Miles playing together. But they played together often. I've also interviewed on my radio show Alan Douglas, who produced those albums after Jimmy died that were controversial because he didn't use Jimmy's sidemen. And Jimmy used to have a place over his studio, a little hangout room, and he would come over there, and him and Miles would get together in that room. So there were many accounts, but you have to do the research. There's no formal album, in other words.
Yeah, that's too bad, because that would have been something to hear for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just to, like you said, at top of their game, like to come together like that would be something. Sam, before we end off, any other questions you'd like to ask?
I do not have any as of right now.
Okay. Well, Jimmy, do you want to talk a little bit about Kiss the Sky and how people can see you there, as well as your websites and stuff like that?
Yes, Kiss the Sky is the only authentic Hendrix show. I've been doing this since 1968. I believe it's my 56th year. And the authenticity speaks for itself. You can go to kisstheskytribute.com. That's kisstheskytribute.com. and you can get more information, tour dates, and more importantly is the endorsements by celebrities about this show. And you can see for yourself why the show is trying to be stopped. Now, I'm not allowed to say who's trying to stop it, but you can get an idea. But you can see why for yourself. They don't want this to continue. You can also go to my website, New Divinity, S as in sound, F as in film, C as in creation. So that's newdivinitysfc.com. Get more information about me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. This has been super fun and one I've been looking forward to, as I'm sure you could tell by me just rambling on forever.
No, it's great, man. Great talking to you guys, man. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity, because a lot of people don't want this information. Believe me. They claim they want no information about Jimi Hendrix and rock stars in particular, but when I approach them, they don't want it. They don't want this.
Oh yeah, no. As soon as Mark was talking about it a little bit, I was like, yes, I would love to talk. So
yeah, special shout out to Mark, man. He's done a lot for me over the years. I really appreciate him.
Yeah, Mark's a great guy, and thank you so much. We'll have to do this again. We'll have to talk some more, and maybe we'll talk some films or something like that. Like, this was a good conversation, and I love to talk about it more, and definitely try to come out and see some of your shows sometime.
Okay, most definitely. I'll be in touch with you after the Roswell visit. I want to find out about that.
Yeah, for sure. Once again, Sam and I want to say thank you to Jimy for joining us and discussing all things Jimi Hendrix, as well as his band, which make sure you guys go check him out. You guys won't be disappointed. So go check him out. We'll also put the YouTube links and everything in the description as well. But until next time, for more Culz interviews, click that link to your top of the left. For more about us here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know, what was your favorite part of the interview? Did you learn anything new about Jimi Hendrix? Tell us in the comments below.